Integrated circuit chips could be used in everything from radios to missile guidance systems to computers. But it was still cheaper for customers to hand-assemble their own circuits. Noyce urgently needed to get his manufacturing costs down. To do this, he slashed the price of the chips to less than it cost Fairchild to make them, a move that baffled his staff.
I was chatting with the manufacturing manager as the news broke that Bob was at an industry conference and announced that all integrated circuits, these were the most complex products, lots of transistors in one chip, will sell for no more than $1. And this manufacturing guy was sitting in my office, really annoyed.
Where does he get off announcing $1 prices? I can't even make it for $5.
But Noyce realized that the greater demand created by a lower price would drive down manufacturing costs, and a cheaper price would convince customers that integrated circuits were a mainstream product.
This is an example of Bob's out-of-the-box thinking, if you wish. A good idea for an area in which he wasn't necessarily an expert by his training. But this was typical Bob Noyce, to come up with the unusual solution.
Noyce's gamble worked. Demand for the integrated circuit took off.
Under his watch, Fairchild became wildly successful. It was the Google of its day. This was a company that was growing faster than any other company on Wall Street for a while.
Processes, product, packages, price. Invented here.
The sophistication of integrated circuits was also increasing at a rapid rate, while the cost of manufacture continued to fall. Gordon Moore noted that steadily improving production techniques meant the number of transistors on a chip was doubling every year. He predicted that this would continue for at least the next decade.
One of my colleagues dubbed this Moore's Law. And since then, Moore's Law has been applied to about anything that changes exponentially with time, and I'm happy to take credit for all of it.
Sing we and chant, it's one of the grand. La 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 la. Sing we and chant, it's one of the.
As at college, Noyce still found time to enjoy a bewildering array of leisure activities. He directed a chorus of madrigal singers, nicknamed Noyce's Voices. He remained a keen swimmer and indulged his boyhood passion for flight, qualifying as a pilot and buying his first plane. These pursuits offered an escape from aspects of his job that he didn't enjoy.
The problem at Fairchild was that it was located on the West Coast as a subsidiary of an East Coast company. And the East Coast companies had operated in a way differently than the new West Coast companies did.
Noyce had been answering to Fairchild's New York-based parent company ever since Sherman Fairchild had exercised his option to buy out the 8 founders. This had made Noyce and his colleagues wealthy men. But they'd lost their independence and essentially become employees of an old-school East Coast corporation which Noyce felt showed little respect for its most successful division.
My father would travel to New York for corporate headquarters meetings, and one time it was winter. His plane arrived late. It was very stormy. The cab couldn't take him all the way, but he got out and he walked the rest of the way and made it to the meeting, and nobody else showed up. The people who lived right next door didn't show up, and he was very disillusioned by that.
There was this hierarchical attitude in business. It was, as one person described it, it's, you know, on the East Coast you build things that are monolithic, big, large, solid, and secure. And out here in the Valley, you have to create your own rules. And there's a lot of people like you out here that are bright who also want to create their own rules.
Just as its founders had broken away from Shockley, Fairchild had steadily been losing senior staff to new startups which offered greater autonomy and a larger slice of the profits. These so-called Fairchildren were driving the growth of Silicon Valley.
You can make a very good case that Fairchild was the most amazing gathering of entrepreneurial talent, probably in business history. You look at the trillions of dollars of corporate wealth created by the companies that spun off of Fairchild, and you get an idea of just how much talent was inside that place.
Noyce decided it was time he too began afresh. In 1968, he and Gordon Moore left Fairchild to start up a new firm. It would become the largest semiconductor company in the world, and the first to be a household name. Its two founders christened it Intel. Such was the reputation of Noyce and Moore that the company raised $2.5 million overnight. They planned to focus on an application of the integrated circuit that they thought had massive growth potential: computer memory.
With memory, you could see a function that could be made in larger blocks and sold generally. So it was an opportunity to make a complex circuit and in high volume, so you could amortize the design cost. That was really the opportunity I saw.
Intel's first big memory chip deal was with the computer giant Honeywell. But the two companies had a difference of opinion over the chip's design. Still struggling to establish itself, Intel desperately needed to win over its client.
Our survival was pinned to that one device. If we didn't make that, we would be done to making niche devices, small volume devices. We could never be a real company.
I was giving this pitch to probably something like 35 engineers from Honeywell, and most of them were sitting with very glum-looking faces with their arms crossed. When I was through, Bob Noyce stepped up to the podium, and Bob Noyce had a voice that was very low, and when he spoke, everyone listened. And when he was done, they seemed to be convinced. So it was not my technical pitch that accomplished the mission. It was Bob Noyce's own personal charisma that affected the switch.
But as well as his personal charm, Noyce could draw on the industry-wide reputation that he had earned at Fairchild. By the time he founded Intel, he held a unique position of authority in the Valley.
He was regarded as such an important person that his blessing, his approval, not his money, not his involvement, but just that alone was important to an incredible number of people. What I saw was an unending sequence of visitors paying homage to Dr. Noyce. And I said to myself, it looks like nobody in this valley is willing to try a new job or a new product or a new anything without going to the Pope and getting his blessings.
Noyce's recognition factor and extensive contacts meant his natural role at Intel was to be the public face of the company. His lab and management days were behind him. But he and Moore still thought very hard about the company's culture. As at Fairchild, they were determined Intel would not be stifled by the dead hand of authority. Rather, it would be built around innovation and collaboration.
You can do some things in a startup that probably don't work forever in a company, but they also can start some of the culture items that may be valuable long term. I think we did that at Intel.
When you went into the building, you couldn't find Bob Noyce's office because Bob Noyce didn't have an office. Bob Noyce had a cubicle like everybody else.